Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, is reassuring Israeli leaders over the U.S. troop pullout from Syria. He traveled to Jerusalem to talk to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and top security officials.
Bolton says that after the troop withdrawal, the United States will still protect Israel and its other allies in the Middle East. Ephraim Graham has that story.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton arrived against the backdrop of President Donald Trump's decision to pull 2,000 U.S. troops out of Syria.
Right on your border, we have the problem of the conflict in Syria. We're going to be discussing the president's decision to withdraw, but to do so from northeast Syria in a way that makes sure that ISIS is defeated and is not able to revive itself and become a threat again.
The announcement created concern in Israel and fear among the U.S. ally, the Kurds, who have fought ISIS. But Bolton said the U.S. would take care of its friends.
And to make sure that the defense of Israel and our other friends in the region is absolutely assured. And to take care of those who have fought with us against ISIS and other terrorist groups.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Bolton for President Trump's support for Israel and offered to show him Israel's northern border with Syria on the Golan Heights.
The Golan Heights is tremendously important for our security, and I think that when you're there, you'll be able to understand perfectly why we'll never leave the Golan Heights and why it's important that all countries recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Israel captured the Golan Plateau during the last 2 days of the 1967 Six-Day War. Now Iran is trying to take up positions along that border. For now, the U.S. troop pullout from Syria seems to be on hold, but Israel and the region are waiting to see what President Trump's next move will be. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, in other news, it's the 17th day of the partial government shutdown, and whether this is the darkness right before the dawn or if there's still no end in sight, well, we'll see. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. President Trump and congressional Democrats are both holding firm in their positions with more negotiations ahead over the shutdown showdown after weekend talks between Vice President Mike Pence and congressional aides ended in a stalemate. Amber Strong has the story.
Lots of talk here in Washington, but little progress as leaders from both sides of the aisle dig in over the battle to fund the government.
Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and myself can solve this in 20 minutes. If they want to.
The president is holding out for that $5 billion he says is needed to protect Americans from illegal immigrants at the southern border, including criminal activities like drug dealing and human trafficking.
We have an absolute crisis.
He's also signaling a change in language when it comes to the wall, tweeting, "We are now planning a steel barrier rather than concrete." It's something the White House hopes will ease negotiations with Democrats, who they say voted for a border in the past.
At the end of the day, though, Democrats have said over and over again that they support border security. Now it's time to fulfill some of those statements that they've made.
With or without Democratic support, President Trump is toying with the idea of declaring a national emergency and having the military build the wall.
I think the president would be wide open to a court challenge saying, where's the emergency? You have to establish that in order to do this.
Caught in the middle, 800,000 federal employees, including TSA workers. Some of those employees are calling in sick, resulting in long lines at airports.
Please, everyone, have patience with the officers that came to work.
The TSA admits the calls have increased, but nothing extraordinary. Democrats say they want to open individual departments now and continue immigration discussions down the road.
This gun at our head approach with closing down the government is the thing we most oppose.
And non-government workers could feel the sting here too. With tax season right around the corner, experts say those federal tax refunds could be delayed. Amber Strong, CBN News in Washington.
Thanks, Amber. Well, investors hope the rally on Wall Street will keep going in the weeks ahead. Stocks took off Friday after the Federal Reserve Chairman said the Fed would be patient with future interest rate hikes. Many investors have blamed the Fed for the sharp drop in stocks in the last 3 months because of its plans to keep raising rates. White House correspondent Ben Kennedy sat down with one of President Trump's former economic advisors to get his perspective on the Fed's actions.
If we were to go into a recession in 2019,
the villain would be the Fed.
In order to become the hero, economist Stephen Moore says the Federal Reserve should be lowering, not raising interest rates.
The Fed should absolutely stop raising rates. In fact, they should start to cut the rates. They should reverse the mistake they made the week before Christmas.
That mistake, as Moore puts it, is when the Fed raised interest rates for the fourth time in 2018. Job growth and what had been a strong economy last year encouraged the committee to go for the 0.25% increase. But Moore says investors clearly saw it as the wrong move because of growing concerns of an economic slowdown and weaker profits for businesses. To top that, they thought the higher rates could hurt the economy at a time when it could be getting weaker.
While the Fed chairman Jerome Powell was speaking and making the announcement, the stock market dropped 600 points. You know, that's sending a signal that you're doing the wrong thing.
President Trump said the Fed was going loco by raising rates again, leading to speculation that the president might try to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell or ask him to resign.
If the president asked you to resign, would you do it? No.
Moore says the Fed has been raising rates because it's concerned about inflation. He says the Fed seems to believe that a strong economy causes inflation, which he says is just not true. But signs that the economy is slowing down and the steep drop in the stock market in the last 3 months might make the Fed loosen its grip. Now, Fed officials have already signaled they expect 2 rate hikes this year, but they also say they're watching the latest economic data and they'll be patient about raising rates again. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Ben. Christians in Egypt are celebrating Christmas today, and part of that celebration includes the dedication of the Middle East's largest church for Coptic Christians. CBN's Chris Mitchell brings us a story from Cairo.
At Christmas Mass, Egypt's Coptic Pope inaugurated the Nativity of the Christ Cathedral, with the president joining the celebration. The building is a gift to the church from Egypt's President El-Sisi. He commissioned the construction of the cathedral in 2017 to be part of the new administrative capital outside of Cairo. And he said he wanted the church, the new church, to be a message of peace and love to the world. Joel Rosenberg led a delegation of evangelicals here for the dedication.
I think what we've seen here is historic. I really think it's a game changer that a Sunni Arab Muslim president of the world's largest Arab country has built a church, the largest in the Middle East, and given as a gift to the Christians of Egypt. We've never seen anything like it in all of history, and I think President Sisi is sending a message not just to his own people, but to all Muslims. Muslims and Christians can live in unity and coexistence. That's an extraordinary development.
In a tweet, President Trump praised El-Sisi for moving his country to a more inclusive future. Johnny Moore agrees, seeing him leading a new spirit movement in the Middle East.
You know, there's a verse in the Bible, that says what the enemy meant for evil, God uses for good. And the horrific terrorism of the last decade, at its height in 2014 and 2015 with ISIS, what it has done is it has created fertile ground for a new spirit of tolerance to rise across the region, and you have leaders who are facilitating that.
Reverend Andrea Zaki, president of the Protestant churches here, says the Egypt portrayed in the media is not the whole story.
I think Egypt is moving. Changes is not like a computer. Click, you have a new screen in a second. Culture, customs, nations, economy, all of these are taking long time, but you can feel and see and touch the changes.
The group also met with Pope Tadros, the head of the largest Christian church in the Middle East, and with evangelical leaders. They shared the same story.
And the answer that they give us time and time again repeatedly is we have challenges, but the situation is so much better than it was under Sadat, under Mubarak, under the Muslim Brotherhood for sure. We're encouraged, but we're going to keep pressing for even more change.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the new Church of the Nativity, Cairo.
Thanks, Chris. Gordon, it is so significant to see President El-Sisi at this church's dedication.
Even more significant is he actually provided the money. That was done by the Egyptian government as a sign. They're trying to build a new Cairo, and they want to show that we can be a model of tolerance. You go back in recent history, the model of tolerance back in the 1950s, the 1960s was Lebanon, where Christians and Jews and Muslims all got along. They all formed a coalition government. It became known as the Jewel of the Mediterranean. And then the Palestinians moved in 1972, and before long, country's down to civil war, and it's still a war zone today. That's what happens when radicals come into the equation. So if El-Sisi can say we can be a nation of tolerance, we can be a nation of cooperation, there are examples in recent history that show it can work. We'll see if it does. Let's all pray that it does, because if it does, then it becomes a model not just for Egypt, but also for Iraq and the UAE and several other countries. How can we all just get along? Terry?
Well, what do a food pantry, a coffee shop, and a bicycle store have in common? They're all working together to meet the needs of the poor.
Watching people kind of transform from a place of no hope and despair to a place where they say, you know, I might have a future after all, is thrilling to me.
See how collaboration is changing a community when we come back.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
My cancer started as ovarian cancer, and it kept coming back in different places. We went from everything being fine to everything not being fine. Being a Christian, there's heaven, but I'm doing this for my children because I want to be around to watch them grow up. I really needed someone who could think outside the box.
We did the genomic testing pretty early in Christine's course. What we're trying to do is find a mutation that the cancer has that we can then exploit.
If you or someone you love is fighting cancer, go to cancercenter.com.
With our treatments, we've had a great success for her. She's back to living a normal life with her family.
Medicine and technology combined with the warm embrace of the Spirit.
I had spiritual support, a pastor on call. There's an atmosphere of hope. I want to be around to be a grandma. That's my goal.
Call or go to cancercenter.com. Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Comprehensive Cancer Care Network. Appointments available now.
Tomorrow. Don't give up on your New Year's resolution yet. Learn the easy ways you can have a healthy 2019. And it's not just what you eat, but when. Dr. Michael Rosen reveals the science behind getting the most out of your body. Then, a victim of abuse.
What's going on with me?
Who tried to burn away his pain. How he finally found peace.
And so I'm like, time out.
On tomorrow's 700 Club.
Well, people across one city in the state of Washington are banding together to help lift some of their poorest neighbors out of poverty. And as Paul Strand reports, their example could become a model for the nation.
My bike recently busted here in Vancouver, Washington, and a friend said you need to take it to Wheel Deal's Bike Shop because they're doing something decidedly different. I said, just how different can it be? Well, they're part of a movement to reach out to the down and out people here in Vancouver and lift them up.
A big part of that effort is Open House Ministries, which runs a massive shelter as well as a coffee shop, a thrift store, and the bike shop.
We have a very, very bad neighborhood.
Mark Roscom is both Open House's chaplain and Wheel Deal's manager.
There's a lot of heroin, a lot of methamphetamine, a lot of addiction, and one thing even addicted people want is bicycles.
Renee Stevens heads up Open House, but not when she showed up at the shelter 19 years ago.
I was addicted to drugs. I was abused. I was trying to be divorced.
Stevens realizes a place like Open House can't do all it takes to get those in poverty or addiction up and out permanently.
Experts in each field need to collaborate together for one good common cause.
In Vancouver, people in food, health, housing, banking, training, and educating, or even just volunteering, are working side by side to pull folks out of poverty and dire need. Like Matt Edmonds, New Heights Church asked this.
Who are the least, the last, and the lost? And that group of individuals often find themselves uninsured. So let's open up a free clinic for the uninsured.
Edmonds himself is at the Clark County Food Bank, working with some 40 pantries and agencies, thousands of volunteers, as well as with many area grocery stores, which donate about 2 million pounds of food a year.
We find food without a home and get it to homes without food.
But the food bank also teaches people in those homes how to shop wisely, budget effectively, and cook healthier, less expensive food. And it's operating a pantry in a row of places, all trying to lift up Vancouver's down and outers.
The Lighthouse Credit Union is offering financial services and banking services to people in poverty. Right next door is our food pantry offering food assistance to people in poverty. Right next door is a housing ministry that's offering housing assistance to people in poverty.
And this kitchen next to that will soon be a training school for some of those people to become chefs and cooks. Brett Bryant is a banker who's helping Lighthouse Credit Union change the lives of its low-income customers, training them how to budget and use money and credit wisely.
You start seeing transformation in people's behaviors.
All these places and volunteers are working together just to help others.
These type of collaborations can and ought to be happening, not just here in Clark County, but across our nation.
Well, the thing is, that takes a lot of sacrificing and a lot of volunteers. Maybe you're one of those volunteers.
Edmund says those he works with get blessed richly.
They walk away saying, man, I feel filled up.
Watching people kind of transform from a place of no hope and despair to a place where they say, you know, I might have a future after all, is thrilling to me.
You see that kind of transformation in folks like Lori Richardson and her husband, lifted up by both Open House and Lighthouse. Lighthouse helped them dig out of poverty and get into a home, and both work now at Open House, helping others all day long.
It's amazing how you can just touch the lives of and put hope into somebody just over a cup of coffee or a blanket.
We have non-believing partners and believing partners, but even people that are skeptical about Christianity cannot argue with the results that God is changing lives here.
Bryant asks what you'll leave behind that's permanent.
It's certainly not the stuff you have. It's the legacy you leave. It's the impact you leave. It's the ripple that goes through the following generations. And so this is some of the most permanent work I've ever done.
When you're helping a street person out, helping them out of addiction, helping them out of poverty, you're not just helping that one person, but their children and their grandchildren, and the ripples go on and on. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Vancouver, Washington.
What a wonderful story, and all part of God's plan. And he says it pretty clearly in his word that he has a future for us. I know the plans that I have for you, to give you a hope and a future. He doesn't have plans of destruction. He has plans to give us a hope and a future. And when we get alongside of that, well, we're on the side of the angels.